Europe wants to lead in AI and high-performance computing, the digital backbone here has to be ready to carry all the weight. Germany's Federal Minister for Digital Affairs and State Modernization is joining us today here on this stage. I would like to please welcome both. Please welcome Martin, the CEO and co-founder of DTM, to present the next guest.
Okay, so I would love to start the introduction of our next guest with a story that says a lot about our next guest. In May 2025, he walked into a job that didn't exist a week earlier. No ministry, no staff, no office space. Most politicians would now draw an org chart. He called it a startup and meant it. Digitalministerium als Startup became his operating manual. He's a physicist by training, partner at BCG, was partner CEO's Economy, and now in May 2025, Germany's first ever Federal Minister for Digital Affairs and Government Modernization. And his startup shipped. For example, an open source agent-based platform that collapses the approval procedures for Germany's high-recurrent core networks from months into hours. This is something I believe extremely exciting. There is a lot of talk in politics. This is a minister that ships. And here's the line that matters for this room. He says, AI is our chance for a comeback in industry. We must not become dependent here. As said this morning, we want to rediscover in Europe the big bets, the thinking about the new demand stack. And we have here a man who has the courage and the speed to put his name behind this. Please welcome our Minister for Digital Affairs and Government Modernization, Karsten Wildberger.
Well, thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Excellencies, Director Berger, President Schäfer, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here at the Deep Tech Momentum 2026. And in preparing for today, I came across a passage on your website. It states a truth we should not look away from, and I quote, "There was a time when Europe engineered the future. Da Vinci's flying machines, Copernicus' heliocentric model, James Watt's steam engine, Marie Curie's radiation therapies, Gutenberg's printing press." And then I quote, "Today, our most promising founders must travel to Abu Dhabi or the US to access growth capital. And we can no longer guarantee the security of our own continent." A sharp diagnosis. Perhaps a harsh one, but it lands. And the conclusion is right. It is time to reclaim Europe's legacy of innovation and restore its sovereignty. So let me take a clear-eyed look at where Germany, as part of Europe, stands today. Over the past decade, US stock market capitalization has nearly tripled, from 25 to nearly 70 trillion US dollars. And Germany, 10 years ago, around 1.8 trillion dollars back then, and about $2 trillion today. 10 years, barely any movement. And where does this growth come from? Software, chips, payment platforms, cloud, digital business models. The platforms were built elsewhere, the standards set elsewhere, the business model scaled elsewhere, and so the growth happened also elsewhere. And we cannot afford another decade like that, and we do not have to. Last year, Germany filed nearly 24,500 European patent applications, second worldwide, behind only the United States. Nearly 3,600 new startups, a 29% increase, 1 in 3 built on AI. So some very promising momentum in the making and some promising movement. That is obviously no guarantee, but is a foundation we must build on. And growth often happens from the ground up. breakthrough innovation, Sprunginnovation, comes from people no one saw coming. And we have to create space for the new, for the unknown, for those who dare to imagine a different future and who turn that vision into reality. We are not lacking in inventive power. The patents prove that. We are not lacking in entrepreneurial spirit. The startup proves that. What we are lacking is something else. We invent at world-class level, but we scale in a very mediocre way. Too few patents become platforms. Too few startups become global leaders. That is the task of this decade, a decade that belongs to those who act now. We have a lever that can change everything. Sovereignty and artificial intelligence are not two topics. They are one. Whoever depends on AI from elsewhere depends politically and economically. And this is why you are here. AI is reshaping every market and already changing how we live and work. It allows us to leapfrog entire stages of development, which is precisely our chance to regain a leadership position. But if Europe leaves it to others to build the infrastructure that we depend on, we will not shape the next decade of growth. We'll be paying rent on it. So what does sovereign AI take? 3 things. First, rules we can shape. Second, infrastructure we can trust. And third, an ecosystem that can scale. First, rules we can shape. The principle is simple. What does not yet exist, we do not regulate away before it emerges. Regulate concrete products and concrete risks before they reach the market, yes. But for innovation, full speed ahead. We're implementing the EU AI Act one-to-one, no gold plating, and pushing for further simplification through the AI Omnibus. And on data, we need a long overdue distinction between industrial and consumer data and a consolidated answer to the fragmentation of German data protection. We must move from data protection to the responsible use of data. And on infrastructure, we need infrastructure we can trust. Germany's first national data center strategy will lead to a doubling in capacity from 3 to 6 gigawatts and will quadruple AI compute. On that foundation, we are also building a sovereign cloud as the backbone of digital public services. And on top of that infrastructure, we will create an ecosystem that can scale. And this sovereign infrastructure becomes the basis for development in open source and in well-defined interoperable standards, a digital public stack that comes with the promise to scale. And we are strengthening domestic AI value creation, from language models to vision and world models. The Agentic AI Hub brings startups directly into the work of public administration, building agentic solutions that automate and accelerate complex approval processes. Sovereignty doesn't mean solitude. It is not protectionism. Sovereignty means choice, to switch, to verify, to say no when a vendor or dependency no longer serves us. And sovereignty is offensive too. Growth, new businesses, new markets we have not yet reached. A defense without offense is a fortress without any economy inside. And a few days ago, we could see what this looks like in practice. Aleph Alpha and Cohere, Canada's leading AI company, are merging. A new AI champion with, so to speak, dual citizenship, German and Canadian. And the Schwartz Group is providing the sovereign infrastructure and the valuation around $20 billion US. So when capital, compute, customers, and political will come together, sovereignty stops being a concept. It becomes a possibility. We cannot strengthen our technological sovereignty without startups. So we are making Germany a much easier place to start, build, and scale a business. First, company formation. Starting a business in Germany must become dramatically easier. And a first digital solution for forming a company will go live in autumn. Second, better access to public procurement. The state must act as an anchor customer, because whoever wins the public sector as a major customer gains more capacity to grow and to compete. And third, bridges to industry. Our DE Hub initiatives and other formats bring innovators and established companies together. And finally, access to capital and to talent. We need to mobilize venture capital at scale, also capital for later funding rounds, with stronger incentives for those who back deep tech, so our most promising founders can raise growth capital here and not in Abu Dhabi or California. And we must keep and attract the brightest minds here in Germany and to attract the best talent from around the world. And the Work and Stay Agentur as a concept is one important step towards this. So, I will not pretend there is a single decisive lever that releases every brake at once. There is not. But we are clearing obstacles. We're opening space for you, for businesses, for investors, for the people in Germany. We have the talent, we have the science, we have the industry, and we are one of the largest world's economy with global market leaders and excellent research. So let us stop spending so much energy on what Europe may have missed. Let us stop being nostalgic about Da Vinci, Copernicus, and Marie Curie only as figures of the past. Let us use our energy for something greater, to create the next generation of the new Da Vincis, Marie Curies, and Copernicuses we didn't see coming. Let us honor and celebrate the talents we have, those who dare to dream big and who dare to build. And let us also celebrate those who do not succeed the first time, but who learn and start again and again. Not somewhere, here, in Germany, in Europe. Because the future is not something we wait for, it is something we build together. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Perfect. Thanks, Karsten. So the bridge to the new Da Vinci's and Marie Curie's is really great because literally they're in the room. So this is really a very strong segue. I want to start this first with a thank you. In my personal opinion, the rise of extremist parties in Europe is partly driven by non-deliver of the political mainstream. You do deliver. You have now, I think you're now 1 year in office, and it's very, very obvious that the new minister is as well a startup ministry, and you really ship. So when you think back about this 1 year, what's the one thing you're really proud of? What's the one thing where you say, I would love this had to have moved faster?
Well, the one thing I'm really proud of is I have a... It sounds so easy to say, but it's really a fantastic team. We started with 7 people in the first week. We are now 550 people. And I'm most proud of that people follow. We work very differently in projects. Public servants take personal risks being measured. And I have to say I'm really very impressed by the high quality of the team. So that is something, you can't change anything if you don't win people around you and at a greater scale to follow, say, a target picture and make it real. So that's definitely something I'm very grateful for.
How do they take risks? In what form?
Well, you're trained in systems to not make mistakes. What is a mistake? By not being perfect or having done everything right. And when you engage in a project where you want to implement something, when you want to develop agentic AI solutions, nothing works the first time, and there is nothing perfect. So that is quite a change. And I have to say, I have a fantastic team where I say they are actually quite some change agents, and I couldn't do the job without them. So that I think it describes it. Yeah.
And on the initiative level, when you think about the things you shipped, what would you say is the most you're proudest most?
Well, we have basically 4 areas where we work on, and I don't want to give a download of what we have done. There is so much more to do, but there are some very concrete steps. So believe it or not, on the state modernization, there is a lot of red tape that was cut, by far not enough, not fast enough. I could go through the list. On infrastructure, we're in the final process of having a second change in legislation to expedite rollout of fiber and telco. And for the first time, we also address the very important copper glass migration, which is standing in the way, amongst other things, that we reach the apartments with fiber. And the other area is clearly the digitization of, say, public infrastructure. We have delivered many services, just changing where you live, places where you live. We reach now more than almost 60 million people. Not long ago, it was 30 million people. We have several of those initiatives just in the last weeks. We've reached in 3 states another 100 municipalities to have services that were formerly not available. But most important is we are in real terms building what we call the tech stack. That is the infrastructure, sovereign infrastructure backbone for all public services. And this is not just about digitizing the country with an application layer that is growing, with the sovereign infrastructure, with standards that have been agreed upon together with the states. But it's actually a promise for an ecosystem. When you develop somewhere as a startup a great solution that could be used elsewhere, and you get onto the stack, on that infrastructure you scale. And that is a big promise and a big change.
Let's stay with this for a moment. So you have, I think, a 4.5 billion budget, and 1 billion is spent around IT services and more. For all the founders in the room, how can a founder get a small, with your 10 to 30 startup, okay, person startup, how can you get a slice of this?
Well, first, we have different formats where we invite companies to join us, and we have funding available. I mentioned the Agentic AI Hub. We had more than 600 applications where companies want to help automate through AI approval processes, and we have plenty of those. That's one format. The other is clearly that we are now in a process of combining, bringing together startups, young companies, tech companies with the Mittelstand, with the small, medium enterprises, and to do that also on a sovereign infrastructure basis. So we have different formats, and one very important topic, which is an invitation. We have occasionally more and more people coming to us with big ideas, where they need help on regulation, eventually, say, funding, support, state as an anchor customer, where we say, we try to help you clear the way, but please make it specific. We get a lot of abstract feedback that is helpful and very unhelpful at the same time. But the more specific, the bigger it is, the more concrete we can act. And finally, I would say, just yesterday at Republica, I had a few conversations where companies came and said, we have a solution, how do we get onto the tech stack? Because this is where the state also helps to create the demand. So plenty of formats how to engage with us, and I really look forward to a more strategic role also the state can play. Yeah,
very good. So when you say feedback, you're referring to what's helpful is very specific on a specific process. This doesn't work. Can you just elaborate a little bit what's most helpful for you?
So I'll give you one example. At the moment, we've reached a point where we have a bit more capacity. So we're also working together with my dear colleague Nina Warken, but so with some health-related applications. And one question is, why is it not possible to use anonymous data to train systems in the health space? What's wrong with us? Why do we have to go into other countries in Europe or to the US, and why can't we do this here? So we have some very specific cases that we are now trying to test, also with the European Commission. How do we make this work? We always say that our regulation also has some competitive advantage. Let's prove it now here. So examples like that. Another example is where our German interpretation of the GDPR stands in the way. We interpret it 18 times in the country. And that is pretty remarkable at the wrong end of the spectrum. So we're on it and trying to unify this. On a general level, we've also have the same views with the states. Now it's about practical implementation. So those examples we are working on with some companies and larger hospitals at the moment.
You touched before in your speech about regulation, right? You said there's a risk that we over-regulate and then kill innovation. If you had a magic wand and you could point the magic wand to someone or some institution in Germany or Europe, who would you point the wand to, and what would the spell change?
Well, on regulation, I think the most overdue in Germany is on the GDPR side to harmonize things. But I would also appreciate if some things got noticed. We had the digital omnibus on the AI regulation in Brussels, and we actually achieved quite a major breakthrough. There was a lot of once and asked, mentioned and requested by the industry, and also Chancellor Merz used his weight in the conversation to actually get the machine regulation outside the AI Act, so that our industry has more freedom to use data, which I think is a major step from where we were. Is it enough? No. But it would also be good when things happen in the right direction, that things also from time to time get noticed.
Yeah.
Because you need both. You need the criticism, the fight and the work on it to do things better, but at the same time you also need the recognition that things are moving. Because if we don't do that, we just have a conversation about everything is bad and everything is not working, and that's very unhealthy.
Yeah, indeed. Let's quickly shift perspective from founders to corporates as well, a really key player. You come as well from the corporate world, so you know this deeply. We had Frank Appel here on stage this morning saying ideally we could have 1% of the procurement volume of the corporates being dedicated to startup procurement, deep tech AI and more. If you had a wish to the corporate side to help us as well to elevate the deep tech and AI system, what would the wish be?
I think what Mr. Appel has said is a very good one. We need to collectively undertake much more effort to create space for the new. I think for too long, which is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Of course, you have to focus also on the established businesses, on the established players, and work at it. They create a lot of jobs, and all of those things is necessary. But equally important is that you create the space of the new, and that has happened in China, in the US in the last, say, 15, 20 years, and not enough here. And I think if together with corporates, also the state helps an ecosystem to be developed, I think we can make quite rapid progress. Because the good news about AI is the speed at which companies can make a real, notable difference is very different from any technology before. So within a year, 1.5 years, is actually a long time period in that technology. Yeah. So if we have a more concerted effort in this regard, I think we could really progress much better.
Yeah. Okay, let's project ourselves into the future. We're sitting on the stage in 2030. You said AI is a chance for a comeback in industry. What's the one big bet, one large-scale initiative that we should have achieved by then?
I hope that in 2030, we talk about ourselves in Germany, maybe as Europe, as say, we are the leaders in industrial AI applications, with an ecosystem around it with thousands of successful startups, established industries creating new business models. That, I think, would be the best narrative. Why? Because it creates growth we desperately need. It will also create jobs and help us to fund the change that also the technology will bring as a challenge. But I think this conversation about this country has so much more to offer when it comes to innovation, scaling innovation. I think that would be the best change I can think of in 2030.
Yeah, sounds good, like a good change. Okay, who is a question to Karsten Wildberger? Is there someone in the room with a question? We have time for 1 to 2 questions. If not, we wrap it up. Please.
All the way down, all the way down. All the way down. All the way down.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for conducting this mission with this effort, because it's not easy. I'm really, really grateful for that. It gives me hope that Germany is not something one should leave. You said it's about the systems, not about the people being change resistant. But we see a lot of change resist spread across all over Germany in corporates, federal government, local citizen governments. Would you say it's a long-standing fight for this against this change resistance, or is it more like you unleash this change at a certain point and it's autocatalytic?
I think it's a great question. I wish I had the answer. I think the current approach is we unleash the potential a little bit in the system we have. So by giving more freedom to people and all coming together, certain things are moving. But there are some systemic challenges that we have, which I think we also have to have the capacity to speak about. And what are the main topics here? One thing is, one organizational principle is clarity on accountability. So you have so many people that say, I'm responsible, but no one is accountable. That is a real challenge. And secondly, and that's something we have to talk about, I believe, at some point at a more fundamental level, because I think it's healthy. But to reach that point, I think we have to accelerate within and create and unleash the potential that also the system has, the way it is organized. And then there is a bigger question, which I think we're seeing globally. With the speed at which technology is moving, we have to ask ourselves, is the system as we know it able to cope with the speed of change? Or what is the role that governments play in terms of setting the guardrails? Or how deeply do we get involved and want to control it? I don't have the answer, but it's another structural question which I think is moving at such a rapid pace that you sometimes feel being overtaken by it all. But to your concrete question, let's first unleash the potential within. That's what we're on it. But then we also have to address some of the more structural questions, especially when it's related to accountability.
And we have many founders in the room who really want to change the system and get to the total next level. So this possibly unites quite well. We'll take one more question. Yeah, please.
You spoke about the 20 million that the Schwartz family is investing, which is great. We just heard the European fund for later stage now has 5 billion. I mean, that's nothing compared to what's invested in data centers in the United States. So is there any initiative how we get like 50 billion or 500 billion in scale-up capital in Europe? Because the money is there, right? But how do we get that to a point that is deployed, whether it's inheritance tax benefits or whatever, but how do we get to like 500 billion and not just like 5 or 20 billion?
10x.
Well, you're absolutely right. The delta, the gap between us, the investment that we see here versus the US is incredibly large. Now we can make these statements, how do we get to 100 billion? I would say quadrupling within 3.5 years the compute capacity on AI, just structurally, quadrupling something in 3 years in Germany is quite a change. Is it enough? Probably not. But then we have to dissect a little bit what kind of investment are we talking about. First of all, when we have these huge numbers, they're not just happening because of AI. These investments have been built up with data center structures on the big hyperscaler side, from cloud businesses, from platforms that are very consumer-centric, that sit on trillion data sets. Many of the applications, obviously training, a good model costs today 2 billion, maybe 5 billion in the future of a very relevant language model. And I would say, the other question I would ask, what is missing that people in the US see this as a business opportunity, but here I'm having conversations, how can you de-risk us? Because there is no obvious business model yet in every shape and form in the US, and we see this. So I'm not ditching the question, but I'm saying, let's first acknowledge quadrupling, maybe more than quadrupling in 3 years from now. Is that enough? No, but the change we will see through this, with the innovation power we have in Germany, is bigger than we think. And if we then say the part what we focus more on is more industrial AI than large-scale billion type of queries every minute from the consumer spectrum, requires a different scale. So I don't have the full answers to this question, but I have the ambition to at least make a notable change, knowing that much more needs to be done. But that's why we also need you. And if there are things where we have to clear the way regulatory-wise, that's happy to help on this. But we cannot write a check, say, there is no risk involved. And I don't have a better answer to this, but you ask a very relevant question.
This sounds like a call for joint risk-taking, right?
Absolutely.
We need together, the state needs a bit more, but as well, everyone, founders do this anyway, but corporates invest, right? There is this is a call for more risk-taking in Europe.
Yeah, and let's be clear, we have also billions of investment from hyperscalers in Germany. We have also requests for that. And then the question is, okay, the finite element in this whole equation is energy. So we definitely need to have much more investors from Europe and companies. And by the way, if you look at the Schwarz Group, what they invest, besides their normal business model, I would say that is really, and I'm not making advertisements for companies, but I can say that is entrepreneurship at its finest. And we have other players who enter there as well, and I see some momentum, not at the scale of, obviously, as we see it in the US.
Okay, perfect. Let's wrap this up. So we just talked about State as an anchor customer, building a tech stack for Germany. Karsten Wildberger is a very agile, very fast ministry. So whatever you need, I think we're happy as well to channel some requests to you. If it's specific, we learn.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you for your time and for being here. Thanks, Karsten Wildberger.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.